So, all right, awesome. All right, cool. So, welcome everyone. We have another Evolution of Leadership Thursday event here. So, we're definitely excited to have you all back. Today, we have a special guest with us, Kevin Turner. He has a really awesome background, in criminal justice, where he was a juvenile and corrections officer, and he applied a lot of the leadership concepts that he learned from John Maxwell's leadership um, to his job, and pretty much he helped increase the relations between the inmates and himself as well. So I'm definitely excited to have him on board. So real quick, evolution of leadership, we focus on designing the next generation of community leaders, and we're definitely excited to be hosting this event.
Real quick, Andrew is not shared.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't sharing screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sharing screen. So yeah, we've definitely been consistent with these Leadership Thursday events, and that's what we want to bring to you all. And yeah, definitely super excited to continue this. And actually, let's go ahead and actually just get started. How about that? How does that sound?
Sounds awesome, man. Thank you, Angel. I'm grateful
Awesome.
to be here. I'm grateful to be here with you all. I know that in this moment, you are in the right place at the right time and with the right people. I would be remiss if I didn't ask that we hold some current events in our thoughts, our concerns. We just recently had a hurricane here in Texas and Louisiana, fires in California. And so I would be remiss if I just didn't bring up the social issues. And it's in times like these that leadership matters most. When crisis occurs, leaders arise. They come to the forefront, and they not only lead by example, but they also walk with the people, show the people how to go, show the people which way to go, and then they also go with them. So they just don't run off and leave the people to fend for themselves. And so before we get started and go too deep too fast, I do have one question for everyone that is here. If you're taking notes, if you have a pen to write down, I have one question. I promise I won't bombard you with a lot of questions. But I do have one question that I think will impact all of us. And here's that question. You may want to write it down. May not be for you to answer tonight. Could be something for you to ponder on for a little later. But that question is this. What is one thing that you know you need to do that you haven't done, yet you know you need to do it? I'll repeat that again, just in case somebody's writing that down. What is one thing that you know you need to do that you haven't done, yet you know you need to do it? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to necessarily be in your leadership journey and on your personal growth journey. Could be personal, could be professional, could be your classes that's coming up, could be family related. But I encourage you to spend some time with that one question, because self-leadership is probably the most important thing you will do as a leader, is learning how to lead yourself, learning how to build your own personal growth from the inside out. Right now, a lot of people are talking about purpose. How do I find my purpose? And there are several books. Everybody has an opinion, right? But for me, purpose comes from the inside. Purpose is who I am. What is that one voice that resonates with you, that continuously comes up and says, you can do this. I need to do that. I want to do that. What resonates with you? Oftentimes, the thing that we don't want to do, or oftentimes the thing that we don't want to pursue, is tied directly to our purpose. So I encourage you to spend some time with that question. What is one thing that you know you need to do that you haven't done, yet you know you need to do it? I'm the youngest of four boys. And growing up, my father was a Vietnam veteran. He lost his father at the age of 8. His father was electrocuted building Texas A&M. And so my father didn't have any brothers and sisters, and he didn't have that leader in the family from a father perspective. And so when he graduated high school, he went directly to the military. And at 18 years old, he went to Vietnam. My mother was a praying mother. She was a worship leader, a musician in the church, a librarian, an educator. And unfortunately, I was the youngest. And so between me and my brother that's right above me, there's a 6-year difference. And I didn't actually grow up with my brothers because of the age difference. So I missed out on all the military moves, all of the social interaction that brothers have. And so growing up, I was always in their shadows. And so my 3 older brothers, they all were athletes. I was an athlete. So you can only imagine how difficult it was for me to find identity as a teenager growing up, following in their footsteps. My oldest brother was a track star in high school. I ran track. My middle brother was a basketball star in high school. I played basketball. My third oldest brother right above me, Tyrone, he was a baseball player. I played baseball. So coming through high school, when I would see my picture in the paper, because they had built a family name on so much success, oftentimes my pictures beneath would not have Kevin Turner. It would have Mike Turner because I played basketball, or it would have Rogers Turner Jr. because I was playing football. And so as I struggled to identify who I was growing up, I became very frustrated with myself, not with anybody else. And so as I was in the 7th grade, I had a unique experience I just want to share real quickly. Me and my best friend, we were inseparable. Wherever you seen him, you seen me. He loved football. I loved basketball. And so in our 7th grade football season, we go undefeated. Every time that there was a kickoff that we were receiving and he fielded, he ran it back for a touchdown. Every single time. He was just that talented. Fast, smart in school, good student. Well, when basketball season came around, which was my sport, I loved it, still love it. I was selected as the captain of the basketball team. And so before our first game, the coach selects the captains. I'm named the captain. We're at practice one day, and I was never the athletic looking type. I was always overweight. I was heavy set, especially for a point guard. And so this particular day at practice, he lines us up and he said, first thing we're going to do, we're going to run 10 laps. I need 10 laps from everybody before we start practice. So quite naturally, he blows the whistle. Well, of course, who takes out running first? My best friend, the football star athlete. So we all fall in line. I'm right behind him. I'm in second. So the coach is standing off to the side. He's talking, but he's watching us. He's talking, but he's watching us. And again, it's basketball season. That's what I love to do as a 7th grader. And so when Rod finishes his 10 laps, I finish right behind him. So the coach starts yelling and screaming, and he says, Turner, I know you didn't run your laps. I know you didn't finish your 10 laps that fast. And so me being young at that time, of course, I said, Coach, I did. I finished. I finished right behind Rod. No, you didn't. And so me being a young guy, not really understanding authority, respecting authority. I wasn't a bad kid, but at the same time, I knew I had finished running my laps, right? So me and the coach would go back and forth, and one of the critical mistakes I made at that moment was I decided I was going to quit. I take off my jersey, take off my practice shorts right there on the floor, walk off into the locker room. I consider myself quitting. And I share that story because for the next 2 years, that choice and that decision followed me. That same coach, my 8th grade year in basketball, had been promoted to the 9th grade head coach. So my 8th grade year, I didn't get to play 9th grade basketball. I had to play 8th grade basketball. But what that taught me was, it taught me that I had an attitude that I needed to work on. And just because I was the captain of the team didn't necessarily make me a leader. My attitude and my choices showed that I had some maturing to do. And so I share that. I share that story often. One, it's true. Rod was a tremendous football player. And 3, I had an opportunity to start learning early on just how important my attitude affected other people as well as it affected myself. And so I'm a big believer. I'm a lifelong learner. I understand that leadership is influence. Dr. John C. Maxwell says it best. He says, leadership is influence, nothing more or nothing less. And one of his favorite quotes is, everything rises and falls on leadership. And so as I began to move throughout my athletic career in high school, because that was my main goal, was to be an athlete, I went through high school, through college, without a plan, without a purpose, because basketball was all I wanted to do. However, injuries was a pivot for me in my life. My second year in college, basketball had came to an end, and it was time to enter the real world. And so for anyone that is still in school, or you're considering go to graduate school, get your master's, please do not stop. Keep going. Those of you that have graduated, congratulations. Continue going. I was married. We had 2 boys. We were working, trying to raise a family. My wife was going to night school. I was going to day school. So as school begins to reconvene for you guys, I'm not sure if it has or have already, please do not stop. Keep going. It is so difficult when you stop and you make that choice to go back. That can be a difficult task, being married, raising a family. So I encourage you, keep going, stick with your goals, and stick with your plan. So I started working at a juvenile detention center in 1990 and working at a day treatment counseling center for youth. And at this day treatment center and at this juvenile detention center, that's where I really began to realize how much important leadership was, not only for myself, but for everyone around me. That's where I first learned that bad people aren't created. People make bad decisions. And these youth, for some reason, they were drawn to me. I don't know if it was because I was always in the gym playing basketball, or if I was just giving them good advice, or if I was a good listener. At that time, I started realizing I enjoy helping people. I love serving people. I love adding value to people. However, I was still 22, 23 years old. And not that that's good or bad. It was just at a point in my life where I was realizing this is what I was created to do, was to impact people, to encourage people, to spend time with people. Now I started identifying with my purpose. However, I hadn't finished school. I didn't have a degree. And so for me professionally, my next move was corrections. I spent 8 years working both of those jobs. And I learned so much from spending time in that arena with the youth, that when I made my jump to corrections as a corrections officer, I quickly realized that the adult men that I was supervising were the same juveniles that I had just left. They were just only older and bigger. And so here in Texas, Texas is considered one of the largest penal institutions here in the United States. California and New York is always in the top 2. But Texas ranks up there in the 3rd and 4th area of being one of the largest in the United States. And currently we have 2.3, 2.4 million people incarcerated throughout the United States. And of those 2.3 million people, 200,000 of those men and women are incarcerated right here in Texas. And so as I began my leadership journey in corrections, I was able to rely on my experiences that I had gone through working at the juvenile detention center. And so as a corrections officer, me realizing and understanding that leadership was influence. I'm not the biggest guy. I'm not the strongest guy. I'm 5'7". At that time, I won't give my weight. You won't believe me. But at that time, I started understanding how important it was to use my communication skills to relate with those I was leading and relate with those that were incarcerated. And so when I had that opportunity to start understanding people don't know how much you care until you show them, until you share it with them. And so as a leader, I quickly learned that adding value to someone, telling someone how much you value them doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. It is a strength. And that's a strength that leaders today can share in this area. Just think about everything that's going on in the world right now. What opportunity are you facing right now? Leaders take challenges and turn those into opportunities. Leaders take distractions and turn those into opportunities. And a lot of times people think that leadership is about position. And when you're in the workforce, or when you're looking for employment, or when you're in a professional setting, the hierarchy, for leadership is important. It sets an order, but it's not important when it comes to adding value to people. It's not important when it comes to leading people, because leadership is not position. Leadership is influence. If we all were going to a restaurant right now at this moment, and whether it was a restaurant, a barbecue restaurant, or whether it was a restaurant we went into and everyone was smoking, but none of us smoked, when we left, what is the influence we all would leave with? Smoke. Whether we smoked or not, when we left the building, when we would leave the restaurant, we would smell like smoke. So when we talk about influence, being at the pinnacle of leadership is being able to connect with other people. That is something that I truly, truly believe. And learning to lead yourself well is one of the most important, difficult things that you'll ever do as a leader, but is the most vital thing, because self-leadership allows you to add value to others, allows you to lead others, because when you make that time for yourself, you can pour from a full cup. It's difficult pouring from an empty cup. So in corrections, I had a difficult time adjusting as a correctional officer, in the sense that it's paramilitary in its setting. And so you have a warden, you have a major, assistant warden, you have a lieutenant, a captain, sergeant, and then you have correctional officers down at the bottom. And I was never one to want to move up in the ranks once I learned how important my influence was, not only with my coworkers, but to those that were incarcerated. And so I chose to lead from the bottom for probably the last 19 years of my career. Just ranking up really just never was in my awareness. It wasn't something that I wanted to pursue, because I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed adding value to people. And so when I had a chance to walk shoulder to shoulder with some of the most talented people that had made terrible choices, with some of the most gifted people that had made bad choices, I suddenly realized that this was my personal arena where I could add the most value to our returning citizens. Now, when I say returning citizens, those are men and women who are returning home from prison. Currently, 95% of men and women incarcerated in prison will return to our communities at some point. So I made it a point in my personal journey to make sure I became the influence, just to encourage them and began to equip them and to remind them that you are not your past, you are not your mistakes. You have an opportunity to turn things around if you choose to. Just as you are sitting here with us tonight, you are the future. You are uniquely made, you are created special, and I'll prove that to you here in just a little bit. Remember to bring me back to that, Angel. I'll prove to you just how special you are. So I just have a story that I want to share as well. There's a guy by the name of Rolonzo, and he worked under me. He was incarcerated, and he was someone who had been incarcerated 2 or 3 different times. And there was a period in his life where McDonald's was his favorite restaurant. And so at one point, when you went to McDonald's and you went to the counter to order your food, they would give you everything on your tray once you paid for it. Your cup would be full of soda. Well, he went to prison for 4 or 5 years. Well, when he returned, the process in McDonald's had changed. And so he was sharing the story with me that when he got home, he wanted to go to McDonald's. So he jumps in line, he gives his order. They take his order, he pays his money, they slide him the food, and his cup is on his tray. Well, now the process has changed, but he doesn't know, he doesn't understand that the process has changed. And so immediately he begins to yell and scream at the server, and then there's a tap on the back of his shoulder. And he turns and he's getting ready to yell and scream at the person who tapped him on the shoulder. And the guy just tells him, "Sir, you want your soda? You can fill your soda cup up. Behind you, they have moved it over here." And so at that moment, he was so embarrassed. And I share that story because in leadership, in personal growth, there's no finish line. We have to continuously, have that hunger to grow, to evolve. I was sharing earlier, I was in a conversation with some volunteers and they were talking, because of the pandemic and the crisis, they wanted to return to the new normal. And there's not a new normal. A new normal would mean that we are returning to average. We don't want to be average. Leaders are above the mark. They stay above the mark and they aim above the mark. Leaders see things before others see. And then they also lead others to where they want to go. And so as we sit here tonight, I hope something that I've said resonates with you, because not only are you a leader, you are a leader for the next generation. So what opportunity are you facing currently right now where you can see a need can be met, where a change can be implemented? Because you are the future leaders to the next generation. So leave your mark, leave your mark, leave your mark. And so as I began to go up my career ladder in corrections, I was a corrections officer for about 12 years. And again, remember, I didn't want to climb up the rank. I enjoyed spending time with those that were incarcerated because I knew their potential. I could see potential in people. Even still today, even as I'm retired, when I spend time with people, I see the good in people. I search for the good in people. I look for that potential. And so I was a supervisor over a department called Project RIO, RIO. RIO stands for Reintegration of Offenders. And I was responsible for getting the offenders street ready, which meant before they left, I was supposed to help them get their birth certificate, their social security card, teach them interview skills, and get them ready to return into society. That was my niche. I knew I was in the right position I needed to be in to impact more people. And so I was in that job and in that leadership role for 6 years. For 6 years. I had an administrative assistant. We were a great team. I made sure she knew everything that I knew. I shared those things with her because in my absence, it was just her. In her absence, it was just me. So I knew we needed to operate as a team. And so the state decided that reentry was costing too much money. So in an instant, I had lost my position. I had lost my job. And in that time of uncertainty, I had been in the system 16 years, and I had a decision to make. And the decision was to become a supervisor. I could become a sergeant because when you get RIF, they give you a preferential choice for your job assignment. I could become a sergeant, which is not what I wanted to do. Or I could go back to being a correctional officer and start at the bottom in pay all over again. Well, I didn't want to do that. So I began to invest in myself, in my personal growth, learning the policy and procedures. But I also began investing in myself. How can I become a better leader? Because I knew I was going to be asked to lead my friends, my coworkers. And I knew that that was going to be a difficult moment for me, putting on rank on my collar, but at the same time being a coworker. And so I went to the interview, passed all the questions, and I became a sergeant. I was promoted to a sergeant of correctional officers, over 70 officers between 3 shifts. And so my very first day, we go in for shift briefing where we meet for 45 minutes just to discuss what everything is going on the unit, pertinent information, give out job assignments. My very first day, the very first thing I said to my shift was, I'm Sergeant Turner. I do not want to be lieutenant, and I'm your friend. And I said that because in our environment, everybody is trying to run up the ranking structure. And I wanted them to know that they were my number one priority, not trying to make lieutenant. I wanted them to know, even though they were veteran officers, even though most of them had more years of service than I did, I wanted them to understand that there is a bigger picture from my leadership. And the most important thing is that, 1, we go home every day safely. 2, that we keep the inmate population safe. And 3, that we never forget why we were put on this earth, and that's to add value to other people. And so as I began to take over that shift, it was a shift that they would call in sick, not show up to work. And within 6 months, on Christmas Eve, on first shift, normally they would have 10 to 12 people. On Christmas Eve, I had 19 people in shift briefing ready to go to work. I had to offer people, give them a chance to go home if they wanted to. Everyone stayed. And it wasn't about me. I made them feel valued. And so when you start talking about adding practical skills to your leadership style, here's what I've created for myself. And it's called the rule of 5. It could be the rule of 2 for you. It could be the rule of 3. But for me, it's the rule of 5. And when I do these, I don't necessarily try to accomplish all 5 every day. It's just a compass for me to try to hit as a mark so I can make sure I continue to grow in my self-leadership. And that rule of 5 is called RING, WRING. And again, you can write this down, come up with your own system and process for you to continue growing in your own personal development and leadership. But it's called RING. The W, I try to write every single day. Could be journaling, could be notes, could be a business plan. But I try to write something every single day. I have it in my calendar. I know you all have phones, so you could easily put it in your phone, use it as a pop-up. And the next one is R, read. I try to read something at least 15 minutes minimum every single day. So I try to write every day. I try to read every day. The I in RING is to inspire. I make it a point to inspire someone every single day, somehow, some way. I told Angel, I'm going to get better at getting on social media. That's something I need to do. But I even go on social media just to encourage someone, because we never know where someone is at in their day. So I look forward to inspiring someone somehow, some way, every single day. The N for me is network. And it's not always so much about who can I network so I can get. It's how can I be of service? How can I help you get to where you want to go? Because I'm a firm believer, the things that you sow, it will come back to you. So make myself available, get out, meet new people. How can I be of service? Who do you know that I need to know is a great question to ask when you're networking. Great leaders ask great questions. And so I try to network every single day, some way, somehow. Do I always accomplish that? No, but it's in my ring of 5 because I know in order for me to grow, I have to meet other people. and other people need to meet me. And as you are a leader, starting out in your leadership journey or along your leadership journey, there's a great African proverb, that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so one of my favorite quotes by John Maxwell is, one is just too small of a number to achieve greatness. So networking is a great opportunity to continue your leadership journey, adding value to people and growing your own network, growing your own team through networking. And then the G is give. I'm a giver. I love to give, add value to people because I understand the need right now. If you look all around us, there's so much going on in the world. Where is an area where you can give? Doesn't have to always be money. It could be giving of your time. It could be giving of mentorship. It could be giving something of value just to impact another person's life. And that's where leaders rise to the occasion. And so my rule of 5 is called the ring. And that's an area where I enjoy trying to hit that mark every single day. And that is something that I use as a practical skill to make sure that I continue to grow. Another thing that I use as a practical skill is I have a scheduled meeting with myself. Now, don't laugh. Don't laugh. I have a scheduled meeting with myself on my calendar at least once a month. I mark it off. I don't do anything. My family knows not to bother me. And that's my time to reevaluate, reassess my leadership, my personal growth. Where am I going? What's the next step for me? And so that's a great tool to utilize when you're talking about adding practical skills to self-leadership, is blocking that time off for you. I know you may be in school, homework, professors, family, everything is in, but become a student of your calendar, because a lot of people try to manage time and that becomes difficult. We can't manage time. We have to manage our priorities. And so when you talk about self-leadership, those are some of the disciplines that I've added into my life. And so at the end, in here, once I became a sergeant, my influence began to continue to grow, not only among the officers that were on my shift, but among the prison population. Because let's face it, some people are intrigued by leaders by position. I don't want to talk to you because you're not the manager, or I don't want to talk to you because you're not the general manager. And so it does have its influence at a very low level. And so what I began to realize was a lot of guys wanted to speak to me just because I was a sergeant. But when they got to know who I was, there were people coming to me that I didn't even know were on the unit. And then I realized, oh, word is starting to travel that he's a little different than everyone else. And so on your leadership journey, be comfortable being uncomfortable in your authenticity. Be intentional about knowing who you are. I challenge you to look in the mirror. We all look in the mirror every single morning. Every single morning. Brush our teeth, comb our hair, shave, fix our hair, whatever it is, we look in the morning. But I have a question. Do you take time to look in that mirror for 30 seconds and just encourage yourself and say, I'm built for this. Today is going to be a great day. Who will I meet today? Who will I impact today? I'm built for greatness. I am a leader. I know I'm a leader. It's time to go lead. How many of us do that? Just think about how our mindsets would change. Our personal growth would increase. Our belief in ourselves would increase if we just took 30 seconds to do that. Sounds crazy, I know. But I know someone on this panel will do that. Because the next time you look in the mirror, you'll realize I'm uniquely created. So I'm ready, Angel. Here we go. I told you, I would promise you, I would prove to you how unique you are. And I've created a saying for me. And this is what it says. You were created on purpose, for a purpose, and with a purpose. And how do I prove that to you? If everybody on the panel would do this for me, please. Just look at your hand. You have something in your hand that no one else walking the planet has. No one else. What is it? Can someone share with me? Can someone tell me? What is in your hand no one else on the earth has?
Your fingerprint.
Thank you. So powerful. Thank you, Gabriella. Your fingerprints. So anyone that doesn't think that you're not important, that your leadership doesn't matter, that you're not created special, I want you to remember your fingerprints are designed uniquely for you. And then the next part, someone is tied to your legacy. And if you don't fulfill that legacy, someone's destiny can't be fulfilled. So in leadership, always be faithful, be available, and remain teachable. And if I can ever be of service, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. That's my time. Thank you, and I appreciate it.
Am I unmuted? Okay, I'm good. All right. So yeah, thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing your experiences. We are definitely going to move into a Q&A session. However, Kevin here, actually, we were messaging each other, and he said that he does want to provide one free, what was it, a 20-minute coaching call?
20 minutes? Yes, absolutely.
So a free 20-minute coaching call. We're going to be doing a raffle, and I'll go ahead and pull out the name at the end of this event. But that's all y'all. Just as a gift from Kevin himself. You know, he wanted to provide value to anyone who definitely won the raffle. So thank you to Kevin, and let's go ahead and open up this Q&A session.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Anyone want to go ahead and start us off? Have any questions about leadership, criminal justice? You know, everything's all fair game.
Absolutely.
And don't all come at once, please.
My question is, what made you want to go into the correctional facility, especially for youth? Like, was it like, oh, I need a job, or was it like, oh, I really need to help these kids? Like, what was going through your head while applying for that position?
While I was playing basketball, I had a chance to work some summer camps, basketball camps, and that's where I kind of got interested in working with kids. But at the same time, I still was trying to pursue my career in basketball. And so, when basketball came to an end, now I was faced with what decision, what do I want to do? I had to literally ask myself that. That's how indebted to basketball I really was. Wasn't a healthy thing at all. And so shout out to all the student athletes who are pursuing their dream. But you have to have a plan. And so when I decided that I wanted to work in that field, working with the juveniles was a perfect fitting and perfect setting for me. And then I just kind of fell into the counseling side of it because I became more interested in everyone saying that these juveniles are bad. And then I started learning the statistics, the background, the behaviors, and then I was just drawn into counseling.
So you're in counseling right now in your position. Sorry, I'm kind of confused. You said you worked in a correctional facility. So you were their counselor, or what? Or you were sheriff again?
No, what happened? No, you're fine. It's a great question. What happened was, while I was working at a juvenile detention center, there was also a day treatment counseling facility that some of the workers at the juvenile detention center were working part-time at. So when I found that out, I began working over there part-time. And so I worked those two jobs for 8 years. And so the counseling part was with the youth. We talked about living skills, social skills, problem solving. And so when it came time for me to make a career move, because I hadn't finished college, that's how I fell into corrections, because they had a pension plan. After 20 years, I could retire. And that's how I became a corrections officer in the prison system.
Another question. Have you gathered any research on like maybe like you know how each like in a correctional facility there's small little departments or like units where they have incarcerated youth or incarcerated adults. I would be very curious to know how many people actually come back, just the unit that you work with, because if you could make an impact, like I don't know, I would leave that facility and just kind of like go to different facilities and target those kids, because 90% of adults who are incarcerated go back within 10 years, and it's sad. 10% actually never go back. And can you imagine, out of those 10%, how many actually have their own jobs, their own businesses, go to school? Like, that's one of my dreams, like to go back and to empower incarcerated youth and adults, because the first question that you asked was, what's one thing that, let me write, I think I wrote it down. You said, sorry, I have so many notes.
Oh,
Oh, your question, yeah, your question was, what's one thing that you should be doing that you're not doing? And that's one thing that I don't do. And that's kind of speak about my history, because I'm that 10%.
right.
I'm that 10%. And I'm that 10% that has my own business, that's getting a degree, who is in the community. So like what you were saying was just like it was like the universe aligned me to you, you know? Because it's crazy how like so many people who are incarcerated do need help, and it's kind of, and it comes back to what's going on right now with society. We're all indoctrinated into this Eurocentric state of mind, right?
Mhm.
And we kind of lose ourselves. So as a psychology major, I'm like, how can we change this? Like, my dream would be to like get people who are really good with people and kind of like connect them to like, okay, let's leave these institutions, let's work in a private place. So I would love to like maybe even contact some psychology students around like your area, and for them to do that type of research for you, to actually get these incarcerated youth out of that facility. And how can they help? Because it seems like you really do care. You know, as a youth, I also know how it is to be, because I've been in the system in the youth, my youth age, and as an adult. So I feel like a lot of people who are in that institution, it's hard to meet people like you.
Yes.
It's so hard to meet people like you who are in there just to get their money. It's all about money, the hustle. So it's okay. They don't know what they like. Kids are just whatever. We have to discipline, discipline, discipline. And they don't understand that it's something psychological in there. Like, they really need people who love them like how you love people.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think for me, from my experience, one of the things that I love about what you just said falls right into a line of leadership and personal growth. Majority of the people that are incarcerated, when they are placed on parole or discharge their sentence and come home, we have plenty of services. I love the fact that a lot of people want to give them a job, but a job doesn't erase what you just gone through and experienced.
Yeah.
Yes, you need a job, but here's my thing. If you get a job, does that change your behavior of what you just experienced in prison? No, it doesn't. And so my purpose and my impact on the community is called reentry, for men and women coming home from the youth centers or criminal justice department. In the reentry realm, everyone wants to give housing. We need that. Everyone wants to give employment. We need that. But I think the missing key for me personally is personal growth.
Yeah.
Mentoring these women and men and showing them how to be productive and successful. Because some of the greatest artists I met them while they were incarcerated.
Right.
Some of the most talented singers, I met them while they were incarcerated. Some of the most richest people in Texas, I met them while they were incarcerated. NFL players, the list goes on and on and on. And so when they get their GED and they provide a leadership and personal growth opportunity, those chances to reoffend are lessened. And so that's the community I look forward to help building, is to provide leadership and personal growth to people that have been incarcerated.
Whoa.
I'm like writing all of this down. Sorry.
That's a great.
Kevin, you just gave me a crazy idea just now. It's a great idea. That even makes me think, like, you know, since evolutional leadership, we're focusing on building leadership mindset stuff. We can also try to see if we can implement any kind of programs and create like negotiations between us and prisons, you know?
Absolutely.
Right.
So that's another thing we can do. But yeah, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
and I also feel like a lot of people who are incarcerated, like the youth, they're poor, you know, like they come from poor families, and a lot of the time you're trying to kind of make money out of it. And I know for them, at least for myself, when I used to think about it, like I would never pay attention to anybody unless you have money. You know what I mean? And it
Sure.
kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's reality. Like we have to pay our rent.
Absolutely.
Like it's our survival. We were just I feel like it's so hard for people of color to actually make it with all of these trials that like the white man has put on us. So I feel like, I don't know, like Angel said, it's like we in this panel who are trying to be entrepreneurs really need to make it and go back to like the hood, because or it is the hood, and that's where all the people like all everybody except for like blue collar, you know, federal, but like that's where all the youth are at. Like,
And it's here's the thing that I love to share as well in that realm, in life in general. In my 21 years of working in the prison, Richard, I never heard someone say, Mr. Turner, I woke up and I wanted to go to prison. I never experienced that conversation. You know, Stephanie, no one ever said to me, man, I'm going to juvie today. I'm going to juvenile hall today. No. And so when we're leading people, here's the thing about youth, here's the thing about adult men and women incarcerated, and here's the thing about people in society in general. People want to be led, they don't want to be managed. Think about in school when we were in elementary. Come to class, sit down, be quiet. That's not being led. And I'm not coming against educators. Please forgive me. I'm not coming against. But what I am saying is people want to be led. They don't want to be managed. They want to be led. They want to be given that opportunity to grow. And that's what leaders do. They provide opportunities for their mentees to grow.
yeah,
That was fire.
They really, truly do. And for my criminal justice people, if you're considering becoming a correctional officer, I may be a little biased, but I worked in a state penal institution. If I were to do it all over again, I would work in the federal system because it's the same job. It's more pay, just like Chrissy was talking about. You're doing the same thing, but it's at a higher level and you have more of an opportunity to give back, just like she was just sharing. So thank you, Crystal. That was fantastic.
Because it gives you more time. It's like you're getting more pay for the less time, which gives you more time to invest in other people.
And it's less dangerous.
Yeah.
The environment is just completely different. And if I'm in a position of really just sharing with people how to maximize their career ladder on the criminal justice side, because there are people out there who really, truly want to be a correctional officer. And I don't take away from the state. The state was very good to me. But if I have a chance to mentor and mentee someone I always encourage them, go the federal route, because it's the same job, it's the same pay, mandatory overtime, the perks are there. You get a chance to get a pension to retire earlier. So if you're looking at that side of it as a career, I would certainly pursue the federal way.
Wow, awesome. That's cool. I think that it still has a question right there on the chat.
How's the work environment between coworkers? That is a great question. In corrections, excuse me, it's designed, well, here in Texas, it's designed on a paramilitary style, meaning you have a ranking structure. So when you have coworkers of from a diverse background, it's important to make sure that, for me anyway, the most important thing was going in that gate and coming out of that gate every single day. And unfortunately, like Crystal was just sharing, a lot of people that come from low-income backgrounds or just haven't started a career yet come into corrections at an early age. I was 25 when I came in. I didn't know anything about working in the prison. And so you have your experienced coworkers, and then you have your new coworkers. And the morale at the state level here in the state of Texas, it was poor because you didn't have leaders that invested in their people. So you have coworkers that don't trust one another. You have coworkers bringing in cell phones, bringing in drugs, bringing in alcohol. One cigarette here in the state of Texas, it's almost $18, $19 now. So you take a correction officer that's struggling, they may consider breaking the rules so the morale could certainly be a lot better among coworkers. Great question.
And if I could actually input in that as somebody opposite from the sheriff and in a different state, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I feel like the correctional officers are like inmates. Just like there's good inmates, there's not bad inmates, but like there's inmates that just don't want to change. They're
Sure.
just about the money, about the hustle. They're like, it is what it is. This is my life. It's a yin and a yang to everything. Correctional officers are the same. It's the same thing. Like they are really there to help people, and I've seen correctional officers who are there to help people. They're like, this is not for me, and they end up leaving. And there's some people, because they can't take it, they're like, this is not for me. Like, I just can't take it. I'm really about helping people. And it's like a gang between them.
Sure.
And also whites run that system too. Like I mean, it is what it is, and they run it, and they could. So I know, because I used to talk to, I feel like I just ask so many questions all the time. I just don't understand people's brains, so I'm always asking questions. And I used to ask some sheriffs, like at least in the women department, there's not like a lot of beatings and like rape, but in the men facility there is. And even in that side, they would be like, if I see something, I kind of just have to walk away. And I'm just like, but you supposed to lead by example. They're just like, kind of like, it is what it is. So
I'm glad you said that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm glad you said that. And that's a great question. How's the work environment between coworkers? And I don't want to leave that out there as it's just all bad, because as a leader, I started learning. I wanted to make sure every day, because you work a different position every day, I wanted to make sure that wherever I worked at, I wanted to leave that area better than I found it. And that became my intuition every single day. And that's how my influence began to float throughout the unit of, hey man, if you have a problem, go talk to Officer Turner. Don't go talk to him and try to manipulate, because he's sharp. He's on top of his game, but at the same time, he'll treat you firm, he'll treat you fair, and he'll treat you consistent. And so that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question, because sometimes in the professional world, whether you're in prison or you're working in a college or you're working at Denny's or wherever you're working, make sure you leave that place better than you found it. That's what great leaders do. So great question.
I think Richard's hand is up there.
My bad. Hi, how are you guys? My name is Richard. So I have a huge question, like a little, somehow personal. So for example, when you were in your transition, do you have any fear that, you were feeling that was stopping you to accomplish what you did? And if you can share with us and tell us, like, how do you overcome that fear? And how big, I mean, if you can, put a level of it, like how big was it that you were like, I cannot, but you were, having some tools to overcome it and be where you are right now?
Probably my biggest fear during my correctional time was when I was working in Project Rio. I kind of skipped over that and I didn't mean to. I was a correctional officer at the time, meaning I wore a uniform, okay? So when I promoted to the Project Rio specialist as a supervisor, that is what we call a free world position. So I was wearing regular clothes like what you and I have on, but I was still a state employee. So my years of service continued, right?
Gotcha.
So the entire time I was in Project Rio, I was out of uniform, meaning I was no longer on the correctional side of knowing policy and procedures, how everything worked, how everything was going. I was more on the other side of the spectrum where I was helping prisoners get ready to become street ready to return home. So when they RIF'd us, RIF stands for reduction in force. They basically took my job from me in Project Rio. And so at that moment, the fear was unreal because I had gotten comfortable, because I was in my strength zone. I was in my area. I knew where I should be. And so I was glad to be out of the uniform. And so I had a great fear of going back in the uniform, because when I got out of uniform and was working in Project Rio, I started recognizing I really had changed as a person. When you're working or when you're going to school, you spend more time in the prison than you do with your own family. So I had changed, and I had a fear of going back into uniform, from not because I was scared of what might happen. I was afraid of not pursuing my higher potential. The uniform had became a burden for me. And I had to look my wife in the eye and I said, I don't want to be a correctional officer. I don't want to be a sergeant either. Just being, it didn't mean anything to me. Plus, it was only $50 more. So I was leading from the bottom. My influence was leading from there. So in that fear, what I had to do was really realize it happened in my 14th year. I knew I wanted to retire after I made 20 years. And so I had to tell my wife, man, I have to suck it up. I have to do this. I'm not going to leave 14 years of service on the table. I could have quit and went and found another job. So what I did was I started investing in my own personal growth. I started reading. I started learning more. In 2004, I went back to college to get my college degree. I got a degree in leadership and biblical studies. And so I had to really build myself back up to take that step to go back into corrections.
Amazing. That's just wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So next up we have Stephanie. She has her hand up. And then after Stephanie, we have Gabriella. And she put a question on the chat as well.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Cool. So.
Hi.
Hi, Stephanie.
I'm a student athlete as well, just like you. I'm also part of like the leadership team in my sport, my team. And so my question to you was, how did you apply your leadership from sports into your correctional facility job?
I took the team aspect with me. And I realized that if I wanted to have influence, I realized that I had to be able to connect with others. And when you're talking about bringing a team together, team has many different acronyms to it. Some people say together everyone achieves more, and that's true. But I tend to come at team from trust. It has to be built. The E is for effort. We have to give that every single day. So we have trust. It comes from effort, giving that 110% every single day. And then the A is attitude. And then the M for me was momentum. How do we create that momentum? And how do we come together as a team? And then setting the expectation. What are the goals? What are we trying to accomplish? And then how do we get there? We live in an age and an era now where everybody says, what's your why? Find your why, know your why. And I agree with that. But I think shortly after that question for me is know your what. Meaning, what do you want to do? Pretty much across the board, if we ask everyone on here tonight, what's your why? It'll be in the same ballpark, for my family, for my kids. But a lot of people forget to ask, what is my what? What do I want to do? And so when I took those principles from participating in sports into corrections, it was easy for me to corral everyone together because it was something that I communicated. I wasn't someone who was out for myself. I act the way I act. I dress the way I dress because I want to set the expectation. I want to model the things that we want to achieve and then just be the leader and go out and do it. Consistency compounds. So the more you do it, the more they'll begin to follow. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's just, I feel like because of like the whole COVID thing, like times are really tough right now. And, everything's like virtual, like we haven't been able to have like in-person practice. So, the vibe isn't the same. The energy isn't the same. Like it comes with a lot of complications as well, like financial wise or just, being at home and everything. So it can be hard to like lead a team like that when everybody is going through like the same struggles or just struggles that weren't there before this pandemic.
Yes.
And so, we don't really know when this will be over. Like I'm a senior, I'm also criminal justice major. Like, I'll be out of here hopefully soon. And so, I kind of start to think, well, what if this pandemic isn't over, like by the time that I graduate and get a job, like people are also going to be going through the same like issues and stuff. So I'm just kind of like, if I can't figure out a way to like help my team out now, like, well, then how will I apply that to like, like the real life, like in a job like that?
Absolutely. And that's something that you can share now with the team is by facilitating a session and asking the question you just asked. Open-ended questions, not so much a yes or no answered question, because if you give me a chance to answer yes or no, I'll just say, oh yes, Stephanie, I'm good, and then shut down. However, if you ask open-ended questions, hey guys, I know we're all struggling. What can we do as a team to make sure we can do X, Y, and Z? And then allow everyone to participate and engage in the conversation. And I think you'll be amazed at what comes from that.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great question.
Awesome. So next up, we did have Gabriella. So right here, her question is up on the chat here. And she asked here, was there a time when you didn't feel like you were leading someone or a group of people when you were in charge? And if so, how did you set yourself straight to lead them correctly?
Oh, man, that is a great question. Wow. I had a position, Gabriella, right before I retired. It was called, have you guys ever heard of Habitat for Humanity? That's a national organization. And so my job as a leader, supervisor, was I was responsible for taking 10 prisoners off the unit every single day. And we would drive about 45 minutes away from the unit to help Habitat for Humanity help their construction department build homes for low-income families. And And so that's where I really had an opportunity to hone some of my leadership skills. They were my guinea pigs. And so when I would get them away from the unit, I would give them a little bit more leeway because I wanted them to experience what it's like. And you're getting ready to come home soon. These guys were in an 18-month program, so they were getting ready to come home. And a lot of times I had difficulty reaching them as a group. I could reach them one-on-one, but I had difficulty reaching them as a group. And I started doing exercises with them to get them to understand that this is going to be you. This is the society that you are returning to. And so the way that I had a chance to set myself straight was I started asking them questions. When we're away from the unit, what do you want to know and what do you want to learn? And they started sharing with me, things that they didn't know. Social Security cards had changed. A lot of people that's incarcerated, they don't know those things. And so I started doing some research on how can I help them grow personally. They're skilled. They work every single day. They've read more books than most people have ever read. They just haven't had a chance to apply it. So I began to create an environment where they could apply those things. And then I felt like now I was becoming the leader I was set to be for them. Hope that answered your question.
Oh, yes, it does. Thank you.
Great question.
Awesome. And then on the chat here, we also have a question from Julian. And right here, he asked, do you feel that all inmates should be able to have the ability to go to college in prison or juvie?
Yes, I absolutely do. It's the statistics show here in Texas that when you have someone that's incarcerated, complete their GED, and they learn a trade or a skill during their incarceration, they will not reoffend for the first 5 years here in Texas. That's a tremendous upside compared to the men and women who do not get their GED and who do not acquire a skill or a trade. So when you have juveniles and people that are incarcerated attending college, that statistic can only go higher. And not only that, when we realize that they're returning to our society, I would much rather have them equipped to become productive citizens in our communities than to come home unequipped and reoffend and commit more crimes and go back to prison. Great question. Great question.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm definitely going to, oh, there we go. We got another question here.
Absolutely. As a leader,
Awesome.
Go ahead, Angel. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, my bad. All right. So as a leader, how do you get people to take you seriously, to listen to you?
Listen to them. How do you get people to take you seriously, to listen to you, to listen to them? And I say that in all honesty, is a lot of times we want to be more interesting than interested. And so when I say listen to them, ask them questions. If there's a disconnect, if you and I are in a group and you're the leader and I feel like I'm not connected to you and you feel like you're not connected to me, you may ask, how can I serve you better so that we as an organization can move forward? And that's a tough thing to do as a leader. However, you will get your answer, and then as the leader, you can adjust, and then you can serve your team better. Does that answer your question? Kinda. Because I think a lot of times, especially when we're leading our friends, I think it's important to always revisit the mission. This is something I experienced in correction. Very rarely did we revisit the mission. Very rarely did we revisit the vision. Very rarely did we discuss the purpose. And so when you go back over those things from time to time to time, it kind of resets in order the vision that you want to cast. And then once you cast the vision, your vision carriers will connect and communicate with you, and then things can move forward.
That was very well put. That's awesome.
Great question, because it happens. It happens all the time. And I think sometimes as leaders, we don't realize we're disconnected because we go. But it's important to reconnect with your team all the time as much as possible. Because without the team, and you get to the top of the mountain and you're by yourself, you haven't been leading, you've been hiking.
That was a really good one. I may want to use that one day. Ooh.
It happens. It happens. It really does. It happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have a question, actually.
Sure.
So after going through the John Maxwell Leadership Program, what changed when you were doing the correctional facility work? Like what impact did that leave on you that essentially shifted your entire reality on how you connected yourself?
I always wanted to own a business. I always wanted to operate my own treatment facility. I always had those visions, those thoughts, but I wasn't equipped to run one. I didn't have the education to be a counselor, although I was doing counseling. I didn't have the degree to be a therapist, although I was doing therapist work. I mean, I was just in the field for so long. But when I was a sergeant, when I became a sergeant of corrections, I was already at the end of my rope as far as wearing a uniform because I enjoy helping people. And so I knew I wanted to do something else. And I happened to hear about the John Maxwell team. And at that time, it fell right in my lap at the right time. And so I did some research. I shared with my wife. That was a trying time for us. You talk about retiring at the age of 50. Well, 50 is very young these days. But I've always known that I wanted to do something beyond corrections, and my wife, my family knew that as well. So I did some research. And so rather than just quit my job and jump into leadership, I joined the John Maxwell team, in March of 2018. And then I I started practicing leadership. I started coaching, started speaking to schools. And then I started realizing there was really a niche out there for me to share my gifts and talents and my experiences from corrections. And so what actually happened, Angel, was I went through the John Maxwell certification March of 2019, and I retired April 2019. But I always knew I wanted to get into leadership, and it just kind of happened at the right time for me. And I'm a lifelong learner, so it's just a great marriage for me at this time in my life.
Nice. I'm asking because I'm taking it right now.
Absolutely. Man, that is awesome. That is awesome. That is awesome. You're going through developing the leader within you?
Yes, sir, I really am. I see here, it's also asked another question here. Any advice as to how to disaffiliate from friends and family who have bad habits or influences? That's a really good question.
That is a great question. And in my personal experience, what tends to happen is when you set your intention on what you want to do, pursue it with all your heart, mind, will, and soul, those things tend to just fall off the less you give attention to them. You don't want to be disrespectful. You don't want to cause any more damage that there is. And that's the other thing about becoming a leader or starting your own business or pursuing your own career. A lot of times in being an entrepreneur, I think we have to remember, and I share this with my wife now, I didn't in the beginning, is I didn't understand why she didn't get excited like I was excited. And then I learned it's not her dream, it's mine. She supports me, she loves me, but she doesn't want to hear about leadership all the time. She wants me to grab the vacuum and vacuum the carpet sometimes. And so when I realized that it wasn't her mission, when I realized it wasn't her mission, that it was mine, I became more comfortable in knowing that she loves me not any less. It just wasn't her dream, it's my dream. And so when you kind of look at it from that angle, I wouldn't necessarily disaffiliate completely, but I certainly would give more time and attention to the things that you want to accomplish. And then I guarantee you, when they see the success and the productivity and the progress, they'll come all the way back around. Because your work ethic, your habits, your success, your progress, that is the influence that will draw other people to come join you and be like, hey, what is that you're doing again? So I hope that answers the question.
Dan, that was awesome.
I have a question within that question. Do you think you could, at least for myself, I feel like I've had that problem. Like I'm like, okay, well, you don't understand my purpose. You don't understand that. Okay, bye, right? Which is bad. I feel like it took me a long time to like tell myself, hey, this is your dream. Like you said, it's your dream. Can you go back and mend those relationships, or should you just keep moving on? What do you recommend?
I think it's a feeling. I think you know in your gut when that timing is. And when you go back, I would, because I've had to do it, I would encourage you to just be open, authentic, and be honest. And actually assume all of the blame, if you will, for lack of a better word, blame. That's probably not a great word right there. But to assume the responsibility, even though you didn't cause the hurt and pain, assume the responsibility by saying, you know what, Crystal, I apologize. I know I'm on this personal journey where I want to be successful. I'm starting my own entrepreneurship thing. And I expected you to be excited for me. And I now realize that it's my dream. But I do understand that you will support me, but I can't expect you to get excited as much as I'm excited. And I think that that'll help in some way.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I also wanted to say Kevin, that I think I also had problems with that, even amongst my friend groups. Like I just talk about leadership a lot, and I do so just because I'm excited about it. You know, I'm just like, yo, have you read this new book or whatever? And I'm just like, all right, I have to learn how to like pretty much when to talk about what, you know?
Sure. And the other thing too that I would like to share, something that I experienced, because working in corrections, I worked in an era of corrections where we were working 12-hour shifts at one point. So 12 hours on, 12 hours off. I'm married, I have a family. So my social network was very small while I was a corrections officer. Well, when I retired and I started launching my leadership initiatives, I didn't have a big circle. I didn't. And so when I would post something on Facebook and nobody would respond, I got offended. I got frustrated. And then I realized that it's not their fault. That's not my audience. It's just not my audience. And I can't be all things for everybody. And so when I realized that, they'll come around, their awareness will be raised at their time, when they're supposed to be in my sphere of influence. And so I was able to move forward from that. But I struggled with that for several months, that, man, nobody believes in what I'm doing. And then I realized they're just not my audience. I was spending time in the wrong area. And so now I've learned that now they see my success, and now they're like, what is that leadership stuff you're doing again? And so you just have to believe in yourself, get in your mirror, get your rule of 5, believe in yourself, and know that you're destined for greatness. You're built for this moment.
That's very true. You said at the beginning of this meeting that by the end of today, this meeting, someone is going to every day when they look at themselves for 30 seconds in the mirror, and tell yourself that you're destined for greatness and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be one of those people for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you're worth it. You're worth it. And not only that, we're not put here for ourselves. And there are people that are tied to our destinies. And if I don't that's probably my biggest fear. There was a question about fear earlier. And outside of that question, that's probably my biggest fear, is not fulfilling the purpose that I've been called and chosen to do here on this earth. Not to be perfect, but to just pursue it at its highest potential. Because I now understand that my life is not for me, it's for someone else. And so it's to give back, it's to lead, it's to impact in whatever realm that I can. And I'll share a quick story with you real quick, if you don't mind. In the middle of the George Floyd incident, I made a post on Facebook because several people were running him down because he had a past record. And the gist of my post was, there are 2.4 million people incarcerated here in the United States. 1 in 28. That's almost 3 million children have at least one incarcerated parent in prison. So my whole point was, if you would just take time to ask your family, do some research in your own family, somewhere along the generation, someone has done something wrong, not necessarily gone to prison. And so when I put that post out there, a kid, his name is Antonio, I hadn't seen or heard from him in probably 30 years, messaged me on Facebook, and it just brought me to tears because he was one of the kids that looked up to me from the juvenile detention center. He's doing well. He's living in Florida. He's in cabinetry, building cabinets, and I know that's a skill he learned in prison. And so I shared that so that you all would be encouraged. The people that you impact and come across, you'll never know the fruit that sprouts from the seed that you planted. You just have to keep planting the seeds.
Dang. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Real quick, I wanted to ask anyone who didn't ask a question, would anyone like to ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
And I also say this because, Kevin agreed to be with us today. And, one thing my mentor taught me was to say yes to life. When an opportunity arises itself, say yes, because that's when you're truly living. And, it's not every day that we can get an amazing gentleman like Kevin Turner himself right here to be on the call with us, So there's definitely one of those opportunities that doesn't happen every day. So.
Man, I'm grateful to be here. And I just realized that this group, they're hungry to impact the next generation. And you will do it. You can do it. If you don't hear anything else I said tonight, ask questions. That is a great key to unlocking the things that you want to do moving forward, professionally, personally, socially, is asking questions. Somebody somewhere will give you the answer that you're looking for, but don't be afraid to ask. You have to ask questions.
See here thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. I see right here, Julian asks, what other kind of jobs would you like to see inmates be taught how to do?
To become leaders. And I know that's kind of tongue in cheek right now, but it's the absolute truth. Because what a lot of people don't know and understand is that in prison, working is not difficult for people that are incarcerated. For instance, when I was there, they got up at 3 o'clock. The kitchen workers got up at 3 a.m. to prepare breakfast for close to 2,500 people at 5 o'clock in the morning. So working is not something that's something that they can't learn or something that they can't do. They do that. Reading, they read more books than they have ever read in their entire lifetime. So hard work is not the problem. Reading and learning is not their problem. It's in the attitude of making the choice to become a better person. And I think that if we took more time to instill leadership and personal growth for people that are incarcerated, when they come home, just think about, with 2.4 million people incarcerated, 95% returning back to society. What if each one of those people just reached one person? How quickly and how fast would that knock down that number from people being incarcerated if each one teach one? So I would say teaching them to become better leaders and personal growth. Here in Texas, AC, conditioning, heating, college, carpentry, construction, welding, there's a lot of hands-on tools and skills that they learn. But if they don't get the personal growth piece to them, makes it difficult. Great question. And also considering that you mentioned that corrections work is similar to the military, do you feel that inmates should have the option to join the military after they've served their time, like in a specialized unit for inmates only? Like in a specialized unit for inmates only? That's a great question. A lot of people say that the system is broken. And with all due respect, I say the system is not broken. It's operating exactly the way it was designed. It is, designed to marginalize people. And I think that if it was available, going in the military would be perfect for someone that has been incarcerated, because they're already used to following a strict schedule. Up at 5 o'clock, go to breakfast, come back, go to class. So they follow a strict schedule and regimen already. And so when they come home, they often have a difficult time, because now all of a sudden, it's just like when you left high school and went to college. Nobody's there to tell you to go to class. Nobody's there to tell you to turn in your homework. So when they come home, nobody's there to tell them when to go eat, when to go to the restroom, when to go to school. And so they have a difficult time adjusting. So that's a great question. Great question.
And I see here that Gabriella's hand has been up. And after we touch on her question, we'll go ahead and go into VD's.
What do you...
Gabriella, sorry.
What do your siblings say about your leadership? Are they impacted with how you were in school to who you are now? Fantastic question. As I said earlier, I'm the youngest of 4 boys. 2 of my brothers are pastors, so they're leaders. My oldest brother has been in the engineering marketing space for the last 30, 40 years. So, somewhat successful, so now that they have a chance to actually get a chance to witness what I do, instead of me telling them what I do, they ask me more questions now. They kind of give the little brother a little credit. So yes, it is different, but I welcome it because I was always the hothead, and now I'm able to have a great conversation with them and give them insight into their leadership, whether it's pastoral leadership or personal leadership, because I have nieces and nephews as well. Great question.
Awesome. Then we have Gabriella here with her hand up.
I heard you have mentioned that you worked in Texas,
Yes.
but I have wondered if have you ever worked in California as a correctional officer?
No, I actually I was born and raised in Oklahoma, and so I worked at the Juvenile Detention Center in Oklahoma. And then when I started working for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, I was living in Oklahoma, but we lived close enough to the Texas border to where I was just driving back and forth, working in Texas. And then my wife got a job in Houston, and then eventually I just transferred from one unit to another. And so now that's where I spent my entire career, here in Texas, in Houston, Texas.
Okay. It's kind of like a two-part question.
Sure,
Do you
sure.
have any coworkers or coworkers who have worked in California as a correctional officer?
I don't, but I currently work with an organization called Prison Fellowship, and it'd be a great organization for you guys just to kind of pull up and look at in your spare time. They're nationwide. It's the largest Christian nonprofit organization throughout the world that serves prisoners, their families, and they're big on advocacy as well. So if you have an interest in advocacy, Prison Fellowship would be a great asset. And so right now there are some people on my team that she was in California. She worked in the Department of Corrections in California, but she just moved to Texas about 3 weeks ago. And so I'm helping her kind of get adjusted to the way Texas operates. It's pretty much the same, just the language and the jargon is just a little bit different. But other than that, I don't have any coworkers that actually went to California.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering like if there was a difference between in Texas and California, and which I guess system would need more like funding, I guess, for inmates to get the help or education they need.
Yeah, that would be at each state's level. All of the funding for state prisons comes from the state level. They're state jobs, and so when you talk about, I think they can fill out a FAFSA. There's a few stipulations that they have to meet in order to continue going to college, to get their college paid for. But I definitely think that it's something that should be opened a little bit more to everyone, whether they can apply or not, because college is a great asset for them because they have time to study, to learn, and to grow, and they'll do the work if given the opportunity.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Vidi here.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, so Vidi here asked, do you plan to expand maybe to maybe California, your leadership?
Absolutely. I'll travel the world to do some leadership training, coaching, speaking, whether it's virtually or in person. I'm definitely open up to those opportunities because I just love helping people in all areas that I can. I speak on 3 things. I teach on 3 things, and I develop on 3 things: leadership, personal growth, and human potential. I just believe in people. You won't hear me talking about being a mechanic, working on cars. That's not my lane. I try to stay in my lane and just add value to people wherever I can. So if those opportunities come, I will definitely be in California somewhere. Great question.
Nice. When we start hosting events at the LA Convention Center, I'll definitely invite you to be a speaker over.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Look forward to it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, and really. Oh yeah, I think Gabriella's hands up again as well.
Okay.
Did you have another question, Gabriella?
Oh no, I kind of forgot to put it down.
Oh, For sure, for sure. Yeah, I wanted to tell you really quick, Kevin. We reached out to Brandon. We still have yet to have a phone call, but it looks like we're definitely gonna have that conversation.
Brandon is awesome, man. I'm really rooting for him. He's turned it around tremendously. Him and I had a great conversation, and I won't tell his whole story, but just in him being incarcerated for 6 months, he was like, man, my mindset just changed so much. And I said, man, it doesn't take long when you're in that environment. So it impacts everyone. But he has a tremendous story. He's getting ready to do some great things, launching a nonprofit to help the youth. Yeah, so I look forward to that. He's amazing.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool. Let me see here. Who hasn't asked a question yet? I don't think Cruz has asked a question. I don't think Giselle has asked a question. I don't think Emmanuel has asked a question either. Do any of y'all have any questions? Anyone who didn't ask a question yet?
I have one question for the panel, and it's not for everyone to answer. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I did ask you earlier, what is one thing that you need to do that you haven't done that you need to do? My second question would be, what is your next step? What is your next step? You don't have to share it here. You don't have to share it with me. But I think if you don't ask yourself that, how will we know where we're going? And sometimes out of fear, we won't ask that question. But there's greatness inside of you for a reason. You're on this panel for a reason. You're involved with Evolution Leadership for a reason. You're in school for a reason. You became an entrepreneur for a reason. And so during COVID-19, Stephanie shared from a team perspective how difficult and how frustrating it is coming together. Things are just out of whack. And one of the first things my mentor said to me was, when COVID-19 kicked off, it was kind of frustrating for me because I had some new academies I was setting up and I'm not able to go inside the prisons here in Texas. And he said, Kevin, you have two choices. You can be bitter or you can be better. And so with all due respect, I'm your friend. So I just politely ask, what is your next step? Write that down, plan it out, pursue it, and never give in. There's another question, Angel.
Yeah. So I see here, it said, Alejandro actually asked, was it hard for you to separate your emotional feelings while helping the juveniles? Are there any work restrictions or limits? Because I feel like I love to help people with the heart genuinely. I just see a good person.
That's a great question. There are limits. You always want to have boundaries in any of your relationships, in leadership, entrepreneurship, in your business, in school, with family. You always want to have healthy boundaries, I should say. Let me add that, healthy boundaries. It was difficult. In the beginning, it was difficult harnessing my emotional feelings because I started understanding that that's not a way to live. It's not a way of life. That is not normal. When we put these kids, juveniles, away at such a young, early age. The school to prison pipeline, if you don't know anything about that, if you haven't researched that, it's a very real thing. I would encourage you to spend some time with that. The school to prison pipeline is real. And so early on, it was difficult for me to harness my emotions because I'm a giver. I want to help people. But I understood real early because they're manipulators as well, and they don't mean any harm. They're just trying to survive. And so when you learn to set those healthy boundaries, they won't break those boundaries because you've built rapport with them and they want that relationship, especially when you become that mother figure or that father figure in their life. They respect healthy boundaries and healthy relationships. And I think that that was one of the reasons why Antonio reached out to me, was because for some reason throughout my career, I always got the worst of the worst, if you will. But I was just like you. I never seen them as the worst. They were a good person. And I always tried to bring that out in them. And so for him to reach out to me some 30 years later and say some of the things he said meant that I set some healthy boundaries. He knew I was a worker, but he also understood that I was a friend. So that's a great question. That's a great question.
Awesome.
My wife, no. She'll give him the whole house, the car, the food. Her heart is just too big. But when you work in the environment, you learn those boundaries over time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually wanted to go back to what you were saying about asking the question to everyone. I'm very curious to see where everyone's at, you know?
That's up to you. I won't force anybody's hand. That's up to you. I just asked the question.
I have a question actually.
Yes, sir. You're welcome, Cruz. Yes, sir. Emmanuel.
So when you mentioned having a meeting with yourself, like you did on the mirror, it made me think about something. And believing in yourself is one of the hardest things to do. And once you believe, is like you just already know that you can do something. And I really love how you mentioned that. So I would like to know, do you have any other techniques similar to that that you use?
Man, that's a great question. Because I can get into a routine sometimes and I forget what I do because I don't always write it down, because there are peaks and valleys in leadership. Leadership is not easy. Leading is not easy. And leading ourselves is not easy. And so that's why I have those parameters, my rule of 5. And like I said in the presentation, I don't always accomplish them every single day, but that's not why I have them there. I have them there as a reset mechanism. So if I miss, the next day it pops up on my phone, I have that opportunity to get it right and to do it again. And so when it comes to believing in myself, it's not only believing in myself, it's understanding the skills that I have. No one else has them. And that it's not arrogance, that's confidence. The skills that I have, Emmanuel, you don't have them. But we're both leaders. And the skills that you have, Angel don't have them. But you are both leaders. And the skills that Angel has, Stephanie doesn't have. But they're both leaders. And that's why when you're leading, it's important to get around other leaders, because other leaders encourage other leaders to grow.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And
yeah.
so some of my...
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say EOL is a great example of that, because Angel is the CEO, and we do have people who do certain things. There are people who can do certain things better than I can, and I have certain qualities that supersede others in certain aspects. So I do agree with that.
Yes. And another thing that we as leaders do is sometimes we get caught up in the comparison game, and that can be dangerous. You are your biggest competition. I am my biggest competition. If I can conquer myself, everything and everybody else really falls in place. And John Maxwell has a favorite saying of his in some of our mentor meetings. He says, Authenticity, you may want to write this down. Authenticity has no competition. And so in leadership, when you get around other leaders and people tend to start trying to keep score, that's not healthy. And so that's why I think it's important for us to have that self-leadership time, that me time, where you encourage yourself to remind yourself, I'm not perfect. I don't have to be perfect, but I'm built for this. And over time, your confidence will continue to rise.
Awesome.
Wow. You know, Kevin, that also reminds me of the concept of when you're staying focused on your own lane and you don't look at the other people's lanes.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just keep going and you just become better and better and better yourself, you know, because like you just said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Repetition is the mother of all skill. I don't know what sport Stephanie plays, but whatever sport she plays, I'm sure she understands. Repetition is the mother of all skill. You're only going to get better shooting the ball if you shoot it. You're only going to get better in leadership if you do it. You're only going to get better hitting the ball if you swing. So it comes through repetition. Repetition is the mother of all skill. And then not being afraid to fail. Failure is a part of the journey.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now that you even asked that, now I'm thinking a question. Yeah, my question is, what have you done in the face of failure that you know that's helped you in your leadership journey?
In my leadership journey, let me think of an incident. I don't want you to think that I haven't failed recently, because I have. I just can't think of it. I just can't think of it. Wow. I give you one. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary on August the 19th. And me and my wife have been together since the 8th grade. And that sounds great. Everybody always goes, ooh, that's fantastic. Well, it hadn't always been fantastic. I'm difficult to deal with. I appreciate her love. But on this 25th anniversary, I realized that in the midst of my leadership pursuit, I haven't been loving her the way that I am capable of loving her. And so we spent last weekend at Padre Island, and I just had to let her know I appreciate you because you support me in ways that I don't always tell you. And so when I was talking in the presentation that it doesn't make us weak when we tell people that we value them, I think that's something that I can continue to get better at, is making sure that I share with her that I value her. We live together, we see each other every day. Life can get in the way sometimes. You take it for granted the things that she does that I don't have to do. And so recently I just had to make sure I reminded her, hey man, I really appreciate you, seriously.
Dang, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna go ahead and open it for like final questions, so that we can go ahead and continue up with this raffle, and then we can go ahead and conclude the meeting by 9.
I love what Cruz says. He says, failure shouldn't be our burden. It should be our story that embraces us to be better. Recollect and take the leap.
That's right.
Love it.
Wow.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Real
sharing.
quick, before we move on to the final questions. So we have an email list. If anyone wants to join the email list, put your email in the chat and you will be added to the email list so you can be invited to future events. And I'm gonna send out a survey there. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Definitely.
Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up for final questions, and then we'll continue on to the raffle. We have any last questions, comments, concerns? Hopefully no concerns.
I just want to have say one last comment. I agree with what he was saying about the sports and like trying it again and over again. Like I'm in the cheerleading team, and so I think that's like literally 100% like repetitiveness. Like, you know, we don't learn the choreography, or we don't throw people up in the air like in the first go, you know, like there may be like a couple injuries here or there, and you know, sometimes it's like the day of the game and we still like don't have it together, and we're like in there rehearsing like 5 minutes before we have to go and, you know, welcome in the basketball players or whoever it is, you know. So it's definitely a lot of repetitiveness, and it's easy to like get discouraged and, you know, be like, you know, like what are we doing? Like, is this good enough? Like, you know, do we have to do this like a different way? Like, you know, and sometimes like time isn't on your side, and you're kind of like, okay, well, you know, last minute thing, like, okay, like we got to, you know, do this instead, and so on. And so, but you know, every single practice is just always doing the same thing, even if we've mastered it.
Right.
You know, like obviously like nothing comes easy and stuff, but once we have gotten to where we need to be, like we need to keep it there. So yeah, like my coach will have us, you know, like keep on repeating it till you know it stays there, or it can even get any better if we didn't know that it could get any better.
True.
And so I feel like things like that, you know, we could apply not to just sports, but to like everything else, you know, especially as student athletes. It's so easy to want to give up because college is super hard, you know, and as somebody else had mentioned, like being a first generation, it's just harder on a whole different level. So being a college student itself is hard, and then having to be like first generation is also like just makes it harder. And
Yeah.
so it's easy to give up. You know, like it's a big transition when you start college, because it's different from high school, definitely for sure. And you know, even as like I was a transfer student from community college, and I can honestly say like this university does not function the same as community college. So you know, it's always like new things that you have to learn, and you know, regardless of which institution you go, it's just so easy to like give up because sometimes you just don't have that guidance that you need. Sometimes it's hard to like ask for help, you know, and so you sometimes like the vision becomes blurry. And so, you know, I'm not saying like that you have to be in a sport, but what our coach had told us was that I believe it was like a very high percentage number, like 60% or more of students who are actually in a sport have like a guarantee of graduating because they need to attach themselves onto something, or else they will get easily like lost in the way. And so she always tells us, like, if you're not interested in like a sport, then join a club or find something to like attach yourself to, because that way you won't be easily lost. And also like your loss of motivation will like, you know, not be as like hard as if you're on your own. And so I just want to say, like, I definitely agree with that, because honestly, like getting used to the whole repetitive thing, like it was very hard, you know, and it's just not like what you do, but like it's also like what you learn as well, like along the way. Like there's always like new obstacles coming in. Even when you think you have everything set, something pops up like last minute, and you're just kind of like, oh my God, like how do I fix this, you know? And it's not just like as yourself, but it's like as a team, you know? So I just want to say, like, yeah, like being in a sport definitely helped me like learn a lot of like things that I would need in the leadership position. And even before I was in a leadership position, like I definitely learned like a lot of those things on how to apply them to like real life.
Right. That's a great point. Fantastic point. And I think a lot of times too, when we perform, whether it's on a job, in leadership, excuse me, in a cheerleading routine, sometimes we're chasing perfection when really I've given my best in this moment, and not saying, hey man, I did the best I could, but I am open to continue to learn what I could have done better. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit of, I tried, I did my best. I don't have to be perfect, but I am open to trying it again. And I think we run everything together and we're just repeating it. We're repeating it. We're repeating it. And we don't feel like we're making any progress. So when you get like that, what do you do? How do you come across and reset yourself to say, hey, I've come this far. I know I can go further. What's something that you can implement? What's something that you can do?
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Great point.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your comment. Truly appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Emmanuel for the raffle.
Great.
Sharing this.
So we're gonna select the winner right now. Norbert, is Norbert still here?
Cool. Nice.
So yeah,
Awesome. So, go ahead. Sorry.
so Norbert is actually president of Phi Kappa Theta fraternity. That's a fraternity Angel and I are part of. And Stephanie is our sweetheart of the fraternity. So we definitely
Fantastic.
let Norbert know. For the class, Kevin.
Okay,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, let us know
Awesome.
how it goes.
Absolutely. I will keep in contact. And man, this has been fantastic. Congratulations to Norbert. Congratulations to all of you for taking that next step wherever your journey takes you. You are built for the moment. And remember, your fingerprints are written all over it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take this meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody, for coming on today and just hearing Kevin speak. And also thank you to Kevin because, you know, he's all the way in Texas right now. There's a hurricane going on, and he still decided, you know, to hop in with us and share some of his wisdom with us as well. So truly appreciate you, Kevin, and I really do hope that this relationship with Evolution Leadership does continue. You know, hopefully even into the in-person events that we definitely host. And yeah, we're gonna connect with Brandon and go ahead and see what we can all do together. That'd be really amazing.
Looking forward to it. I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We appreciate it.
Hope everybody. Oh, someone has something to say?
Thank you, Kevin.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome. Everyone stay safe and stay well.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, all right, everybody. I'm gonna hop on the phone probably with Crystal after.
And I appreciate it. Hey,
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I'm definitely we're gonna share with you the video after we get the recording ready, Kevin, and then we'll go ahead and share it with you. We're gonna cut up some films with that as well, just to go ahead and take some highlights and send them your way as well for your own promotional stuff. And yeah, hope everybody has a good night, and let's get it. Let's stay up.
Appreciate it. See you later.
All right.